Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to another truck history episode. On today's episode, we will be looking at the history of Scammell trucks. Now, let's get started. The Scammell Heritage began in the Victorian era, when the wheelwright George Scammell of Fashion Street, Spitalfields, in the East End of London, developed his business. Later named G. Scammell and Nephew, they were involved in the building and repair of craftsman-built carts and vans. In the early 1900s, a substantial business had been built up selling and maintaining Foden steam wagons and small trucks. One of the firm's customers, Edward Rudd, had imported a Knox tractor from America and was so impressed with its high payload, low weight potential that it is believed he suggested to Scammell and Nephew that they build a similar vehicle for the UK. The outbreak of war in 1914 presented itself as a turning point in the history of road transport. Mechanical transport was seen to work, proving its vast potential beyond doubt to such a forward-looking company as Scammell. So when George's great-nephew, Alfred George Scammell, was injured and invalided out of the army, he was able to apply the practical experience gained during the war and set about developing the articulated six-wheeler, which went into production in 1920. This vehicle, like the Knox, was articulated, and its very low axle weight allowed it to carry its 7.5-ton payload at 12 miles per hour, rather than being limited to 5 miles per hour. Hence, Scammell's First Lorry advertisement, used at the 1920 motor show, carried the headline 7.5 tons of 3-ton speed and cost. The following year, a test vehicle pulled a load of just under 8 tons up West Hill in Highgate in second gear and reached 18 miles per hour on the flat. Orders for 150 lorries were rapidly taken, and it was clear that the Fashion Street Works could not cope. So, in 1921, Scammell and Nephew floated a new company, Scammell Lorries Limited, with Scammell as managing director. The new firm acquired land in Tolpits Lane, Watford, and built a new factory for the construction of the new articulated six-wheeler. While the articulated six-wheeler's motive unit was relatively unchanged during the 1920s, the firm concentrated on a wide range of carriers for it to pull. An early and consistent customer was Shell Mex, whose fleet number 1 was an early articulated six-wheeler. This led to Scammell's patent in 1926 for the world's first frameless tanker. By 1927, Scammell had strengthened its position by launching its first cross-country vehicle, aptly named the Pioneer. This 6x4 rigid had a walking beam bogie, so that any of its 4 wheels could be raised 2 feet without the bogie losing traction. The Pioneer's mobility could be further enhanced by adding a driven front axle. While the Pioneer was popular overseas, its real success did not come until an articulated version was developed. 2 years later, in 1929, the company introduced the world's largest lorry, the articulated 100-tonner, heavy haulage vehicle. Only 2 of these revolutionary lorries, designed by Oliver North, were ever made. They were initially built with the Scammell 7-liter petrol engine, which consumed a gallon of fuel every 3/4 mile. After a couple of years, they were rebuilt with the new Gardner 6LW diesel engine, and consumption improved to 4.2 miles per gallon. With a full 100-ton payload, the front axle weight was 10 tons, and there was no power steering. The drive axle comprised 4 separate solid-tired wheels in line and carried 40 tons, the remaining 80 tons being an 8-wheel steerable carrier bogie. Even though this bogie had brakes, they were controlled by a rear steersman, who not surprisingly had to have a telephone connection to the driver to tell him when to apply them. Fortunately, the speed when laden was no more than 3 miles per hour. In 1933, Scammell was able to purchase a 3-wheel tractor design from the Napier Company and promptly turned it into the famous mechanical horse. Oliver North developed a new automatic coupling, and with the ability of the tractor and trailer to turn in less than their own length, set new standards of versatility in road transport. Over 20,000 of these 3-ton and 6-ton tractors and their successors were built, together with more than 100,000 carriers. The articulated six-wheeler and its brother, the articulated 8-wheeler, were developed into the lightweight range with the Gardner 6LW and North's famous 6-speed gearbox. However, the lorries built by Scammell were top of the range, expensive, and at the time built in small quantities, and money was always tight. The Depression affected the firm badly, and it was in a poor financial position in 1934. Watford Council had helped out by ordering a pair of fire engines, but it was not enough, and it was left to Shell Mex to inject much-needed capital, but in return, they insisted on a management shakeout, which deprived Scammell of his post. In 1929, the firm, looking for new markets, had diversified into 4- and 6-wheel rigids. The rigid 6-wheeler found some success and with its balloon tires, at last permitted sustained high-speed long-distance road operation. The rigid 6 was joined by a new forward control, rigid 8-wheeler in 1937, the first of a long line of Scammell 8s. During World War II, Scammell made a massive contribution to the war effort, building large numbers of pioneer tank transporters, gun tractors, and heavy recovery vehicles, as well as fire pumps and auto-coupling conversions. The first new post-war product was the famous show track. Amazingly, of the 18 built, 17 still survive, and of those, 7 were seen together at a show in 2007. Apart from this, the company also found itself increasingly involved in such fields as heavy construction, oil drilling, mining, and logging, as well as maintaining its military presence, with vehicles such as the 6x6 Explorer, 4x4 Mountaineer, and by 1952, the Constructor in its various forms. In the mid-1950s, the Super Constructor, forerunner of today's cross-country heavies, with Rolls-Royce, C6 turbocharged engine, and semi-automatic gearbox was introduced. Membership of the Leyland Group in 1955 provided ready access to Leyland engines, gearboxes, and axles, and was followed by the gradual replacement for the lightweight range by new models using Leyland engines. These were the bonneted 4x2 Highwayman motive unit, the forward control Routeman 8-wheeler, and a new 4x2 forward control motive unit, the Handyman. This and the Highwayman could be configured as heavy haulage tractors for operation up to 50 tons or more, and were complemented by the full range of Scammell trailers made at the Moore Park Works. A new dump truck range, comprising the 4x2 Sherpa and the 6x4 Himalayan, was launched. The start of 1960s was marked by the introduction of the new Michelotti-designed glass fiber reinforced plastic cab for the Routeman, Handyman, and the new twin-steer 6x2 trunker tractor, which took advantage of the increased legal weights available when coupled to long front overhang bogie semi-trailers. Intended initially to compete in American-dominated territories overseas, the 6x4 Contractor, high-power prime mover with its Cummins 335 engine, a lip clutch and fuller gearbox, went into production in 1964 and found great success as a tank transporter and heavy haulage tractor. It had a choice of the Leyland 24-ton or Scammell 30 or 40-ton bogies, which were to feature on all the future Scammell heavies. With coach-built cab and semi-automatic gearbox, the Contractor was popular in the UK for 240+ ton GTW operation. Over the next few years, further designs were introduced, and in 1969, the 6x4 Crusader made its entry, initially as a high-power, high-speed motive unit with its modern steel cab. Many hundreds of a military version with a Rolls-Royce 305 engine were supplied to MOD as plant tractors and recovery vehicles. Pressure from BRS, who placed the first orders, soon resulted in development of 4x2 versions for premium operation, and so popular did these tractors with their Rolls-Royce 220 and 280 engines was transferred to Guy Motors at Wolverhampton. By this time, divisional reorganization within the Leyland Group had resulted in the firm's name becoming Scammell Motors, and the closure of transport equipment in 1972 had resulted in the transfer of the Nubian range of 6x6 airfield crash tenders to Scammell, together with the LD55 6x4 dump truck. All these new vehicles were in production in parallel with a consolidated A range comprising the Handyman 4, Trunker 3, and the double drive Routeman 3, all of which were now available with a range of engines and transmissions to compete with the powerful foreign trucks which were becoming available to British haulers. A surge of development in the late 1970s commenced with the Contractor MK2 heavy hauler with its 18-liter, 425 horsepower Cummins KT 450 engine and Allison automatic gearbox, and the build of the first Commander tank transporter for the British Army. This 100-ton plus GTW tractor fitted with the Rolls-Royce CV12 TCE 26-liter, 48-valve, dual turbocharged, 625 horsepower intercooled V12 diesel engine, semi-automatic gearbox, and Scammell 40-ton bogie was required to have the same acceleration and braking performance as a contemporary 32-tonner. New braking, cab, bonnet, and winching systems were devised, and the fleet entered service in 1983, having been built at the newly opened Moving Line Construction Shop, which at last gave Scammell a modern state-of-the-art factory. In parallel with this development, The ex-Thornycroft Nubian range was replaced by a completely new range of 4x4 and 6x6 rear-engine airfield crash tenders with engine powers up to 540 horsepower. To complement their automatic transmission, Scammell devised a family of high-power PTO systems to enable the foam discharge system to be operated at constant speed while also driving the vehicle. The last new version of the Constructor was built in large quantities, including a 6x6 for heavy recovery in the Middle East. Two developments by the parent company, Leyland Motors, at the end of the 1970s benefited Scammell. Leyland wished to develop two new heavy vehicle ranges, the overseas bonneted land train and the UK forward control road train, which would feature the new C40 tilt cab. In view of Scammell's expertise, the firm was tasked with development of the land train, and was able to use the same cab and bonnet for the replacement for the Constructor. This range, the S24, was available in 6x4 and 6x6 formats. The manual, automatic, and torque converter, manual transmissions, and a newly developed transfer gearbox. The full weight range, from 40 tons GVW to more than 200 tons GTW, was covered with the Cummins NT350 or 400 engine, but the difficulty of providing a replacement for the Constructor's coach-built cab was dealt with by specifying an American-type crew pod behind the cab to replace the Super Constructor oil-filled flatbed vehicle, a long wheelbase S24 6x6 with the Constructor winch and body was produced. Knowing Scammell's preeminence in the field, Leyland entrusted the 8-wheeler version of the road train, called the Constructor 8, to Scammell. This would at least give Scammell access to a modern tilt cab. To supplement the lower-powered Leyland road trains, Scammell developed the S26 range, using the same cab, and eventually, as the 1980s progressed, a range of premium 4x2, 6x2, and 6x4 tractors, with a full range of engine and transmission options, was developed to replace the Crusader and A range, with as much similarity with the S24 running gear as possible. A military 6x6 version with Rolls-Royce 350 engine, ZF automatic gearbox, and Kirkstall axles followed, and this was offered in 8x6 form to the British Army in 1986 for the hook lift, equipped, drops, vehicle requirement. In February 1987, Scammell learned that its tender for 1,500 such vehicles was successful, but also that Leyland Group had been purchased by DAF BV of Holland. DAF elected to build the drops and selected S26 vehicles at the Leyland plant and to close the Watford factory. Upon closure, in July 1988, the S24 and the Nubian ranges, together with rights to the Crusader and Commander, were bought by Unipower Limited, who opened a new plant in West Watford. So that wraps up this truck history episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Before you leave, like the video, subscribe to our channel, click that notification bell, and comment below. What did you think of Scammell trucks? Need new parts for your rig? Check out our website, jackschromeshop.com, as we have a wide variety of products. And if you can't find what you need, give us a call, and we'll help you find it. Thanks again guys for watching. I'll see you next time. And remember, if your rig don't shine, you don't know Jack.